So Randy, tell us a little bit about what Rattling Brook means to you and your family.
Well, it's funny you ask that because just very recently, this summer in fact, that I've realized that I've never really truly left Rattling Brook. That you never really leave home. You never get away from that thing in your hometown that it has over you. You don't outgrow where you came from. For years I had felt that I had outgrown my little hometown of Rattling Brook. Not that I was necessarily trying to outgrow it, I just felt a discernible dip in what my hometown meant to me as my life meandered along, finding me in one town after another and then another. But of late I've come to realize that you can't really break free from that place called home. My father, Dexter Edison, was born and raised in Rattling Brook, as was I. Father passed away in the summer of 2023 at 85, and his childhood recollections in his waning months touched off a reimagining of what Rattling Brook was, or is, to me. Father spoke in almost a romanticized fashion about his childhood days, his learning to shoot bullbirds with a muzzle loader that his grandfather, Jesse Newark, lashed to the gunnels of a small boat to prevent him from being toppled overboard. He told stories of rowing to Corner Brook with Jesse to haul trout nets, and climbing the aerial with 84-year-old Jesse to pick berries and lugging them back down the mountain in well-stained flour sacks. He spoke of Annie's Brook, which flowed through our garden, its waters providing a source of power in the days before Rattling Brook was introduced to the grid. Thanks to those yarns from the past, I was made aware that a pond near a local landmark called the U, atop Rattling Brook Ridge, was named in her honor. In fact, the local landmark known as Turncoat Hill also had a connection to Annie, as she had converted to Catholicism during her days in Rattling Brook, meeting to discuss her newfound faith at a site named for a person who had forsaken their religious belief for another. All his reminiscing reminded me of what Rattling Brook meant to me as a boy. For me, it was joining Grandmother Edison in a trip to the apple garden, returning with her apron full of apples to make pies and jam. It was sitting on the wood box at Grandfather's house listening to the stories and watching him fill snowshoes. It was summer days at Rattling Brook Falls, swimming and exploring caves, making memories to last a lifetime. It was exploring the hills in this little piece of the Alps in Newfoundland, gathering the biggest maple leaf we could find and compressing them between the pages of a textbook. It was attending a schoolhouse built over the ocean, complete with an outhouse, and fishing for tomcods through the window as part of our science studies, and loading the old pump organ on a Comatic to bring it to the LOL Lodge for the event of the year, the Christmas concert. It was sitting around the stove at Joshua Thompson Sons General Store listening to the playful banter between the men who would visit, and old Freddie Frecker, the man of mystery who owned all those tiny shacks at the end. Our family lineage runs deep in Rattling Brook, back to the very beginnings, in fact. Jesse Newark was the first settler, having departed his family home in Jackson's Cove to find a new life further up the bay. That same plot of land that he had made a home on and raised two separate families will soon be for sale, effectively extinguishing the presence this forefather had established. As Father was getting his affairs in order in his last years, he was reluctant to sell the final piece of that land. They had sold our old family home years ago, but would quickly change the subject whenever I broached the idea of selling the remainder of the land. And now I understand why. My father had left Rattling Brook more than 20 years ago in the physical sense, but to his dying days he was not willing to cut loose this final tie to home. While the purchase and sale agreement will eventually bring a legal end to the Jesse Newark connection to this beautiful little town, we now know that we can never really leave. As Oliver Wendell Holmes said, where we love is home, home that our feet may leave, but not our hearts.